My Empress is dignified, virtuous, and a model of maternal grace for the entire realm, universally acknowledged by the court as a wise and exemplary queen through the ages. We have been married for 3 years, treating each other with mutual respect and harmony, yet my only regret is that she is overly proper, always making me feel as though an invisible veil separates us, until one day, after finishing court affairs early, I decided to surprise her only to witness a scene behind the rockery in the imperial garden that I would never forget for the rest of my life. My Empress, Su Qingyang, was crouched on the ground, whispering something to a pure white fox. The next second, a bang sounded behind her, as if something had popped out. I focused my gaze and my pupils trembled violently. Those were 9 fluffy, snow-white, slightly swaying foxtails. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. How many times have I told you not to come to the palace looking for me so casually? What if someone sees you? Su Qingyang spoke while extending a finger to poke the little white fox's head. The small fox let out 2 GG cries, as if understanding human nature, and rubbed its head against her palm. It even stretched out a front paw to point at the 9 restless tails swaying behind her. I know, they slip out whenever I get emotional. I'm working on it. Su Qingyang's voice was full of frustration. Being a mortal empress is harder than 1,000 years of cultivation in Qingqiu. I stood behind the artificial rockery, feeling as if my worldview had been shaken to its core. My Empress is a monster, the legendary 9-tailed fox that brings ruin to nations and people. Have I been reviewing too many memorials lately and started hallucinating? I instinctively pinched my thigh. Ouch. That really hurt. The scene before me hadn't changed in the slightest. Su Qingyang was still there lecturing the little white fox, its 9 fluffy tails shimmering with golden light under the sunset, looking incredibly soft to the touch. What am I thinking? I am the emperor, the true son of heaven. There's a monster in the imperial harem. I should immediately issue an order to summon the court sorcerers and set up an inescapable net to do what? I looked at Su Qingyang's face. Still gentle and dignified, even when scolding a fox, there was a familiar tenderness in the curve of her brows that I knew so well. She would rage over the palace servants withholding winter clothes, personally visit the imperial hospital to check on sick maids, and silently bring me a bowl of warm lotus seed soup when I worked late into the night reviewing memorials. How could such an empress be a demon consort who brings calamity to the nation? My heart is in turmoil. All right. Hurry back now, the emperor will be coming soon. Su Qingyang finally concluded her family meeting, reluctantly stroking the little white fox's head. Those 9 tails vanished into thin air with a whoosh the moment she turned around. She had transformed back into the dignified and virtuous Empress Su Qingyang, a model of maternal grace for the realm. My heart pounded like a drum, and before Su Qingyang could notice, I silently retreated from the imperial garden, almost fleeing in panic. Returning to the hall of mental cultivation, I downed 3 large cups of chilled tea before barely suppressing the tempest in my heart. Chief Eunuch Zhao Jiao, noticing my troubled expression, cautiously inquired, "Your Majesty, is there something troubling you from the court?" I waved him off, massaging my temples, my mind completely occupied by those 9 fluffy tails. No, I must verify this matter personally. What if it was just my eyes playing tricks on me? That evening, under the pretense of dining with the Empress, I stepped into the Kuan-Ning Palace. Su Qingyang caught sight of me, a flicker of pleasant surprise flashing through her eyes before she quickly regained her usual composure. Curtsying gracefully, "Your Majesty," she greeted. "Rise, Empress," I replied. I helped her up, casually glancing behind her as if by accident. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the splendid hem of her palace gown, nothing more. Strangely, I felt an inexplicable sense of disappointment. The evening meal was served, an array of exquisite dishes. In the past, Su Qingyang dined with utmost elegance, observing the royal etiquette of not speaking during meals or after retiring, a true paragon of imperial grace. But today, I decided to play a little trick. I personally picked up a piece of roast chicken with my chopsticks and placed it in her bowl. This roast chicken was prepared by the newly arrived Western region's chef in the imperial kitchen, its skin crispy and fragrant, the meat tender and juicy, my latest favorite delicacy. You've been working tirelessly on palace affairs day and night. My queen, you must be exhausted. Please, eat more, I said gently. Su Qingyang was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor and quickly expressed her gratitude. She stared at the roasted chicken in her bowl, seemingly wrestling with some internal conflict. Before finally taking small, elegant bites, I stared at her intently. Based on my limited knowledge of folk tales about supernatural beings, foxes do like to eat chicken, don't they? Sure enough, after finishing that piece of roasted chicken, Su Qingyan's eyes visibly brightened, though she still maintained her reserve and didn't touch the plate of chicken again. Smiling inwardly, I picked up a large chicken drumstick for her. If the Empress likes it, she should eat more. There's no need to hold back. Su Qingyan's cheeks flushed slightly, as if she were somewhat embarrassed, but she still couldn't resist the temptation and took another bite. This time, I clearly saw two extremely fine white tufts of fur behind her ears, which quickly popped up and then retracted. My heart skipped a beat. Confirmed. This meal, I ate absent-mindedly. My mind completely occupied by thoughts of what to do when my Empress is a fox spirit and just how soft would her tail feel to the touch. After dinner, Su Qingyang prepared tea for me as usual. Her tea-making technique was exquisite, flowing like clouds and water, a delight to behold. As I watched her slender silhouette, an even bolder idea emerged in my mind. Qingyang, I suddenly spoke, your servant is here. Today in the Imperial Study, I came across an ancient text that mentioned the legendary nine-tailed fox. It said its blood can cure all poisons, its fur is impervious to blades, and it can bring good fortune. I wonder if it's true or not. As I spoke, I fixed my gaze intently on her reaction. With a loud clang, the teacup in her hand fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Su Qingyang turned her head abruptly, her face deathly pale, her eyes filled with a terror and panic I had never seen before. Why, Your Majesty, why? Why would you suddenly ask about this? Her voice trembled. All traces of her usual composure completely gone. I looked at her frightened rabbit-like expression and suddenly felt a twinge of pity in my heart. Forget it, I won't tease her anymore. If I keep teasing her, my Empress might reveal her true form right here from sheer fright. I walked over, took her cold hands in mine, and said gently, it was just a casual question. Look how scared you are. Did you get burned? As I spoke, I took her hand and examined it carefully. Her hand was beautiful, with slender fingers and fair skin, though at this moment it was as cold as ice. Wrapped in my warm palm, Su Qingyang seemed to snap out of her daze. She hastily withdrew her hand and lowered her head, saying, this concubine has been improper. I beg Your Majesty to punish me. It's fine. I waved my hand dismissively and sat back down. I merely thought that if such a divine beast truly existed in this world, to receive its protection would be a great blessing for our nation. I deliberately emphasized the words divine protection and great fortune. Su Qingyang kept her head bowed, and I couldn't see her expression clearly, only her hands tightly clutching the hem of her clothes. After a long silence, she finally spoke in a voice as faint as a mosquito's hum. Most ancient texts and legends tend to exaggerate. They shouldn't be taken seriously. Is that so? I smiled non-committally. I, on the other hand, believe it's better to err on the side of belief. That night, I stayed overnight at the Cunning Palace. In the dead of night, I pretended to be fast asleep, quietly peeking through a slit in my eyes. Beside me, Su Qingyang tossed and turned, clearly unable to sleep either. After a while, she seemed to think I had fallen into deep slumber and carefully lifted the quilt to sit up. Moonlight streamed through the window lattice, casting its glow upon her. I saw her let out a soft sigh. And then, with a sudden poof, those 9 fluffy tails emerged from behind her once more, like a giant dandelion in full bloom, covering half the bed. She seemed to feel a bit warm, as one of her tails fanned herself like a handheld fan. Me, I swear, I used the greatest self-control of my life to keep from laughing out loud on the spot. So tails have this function too. She sat hugging her knees on the bed, lost in thought, her 9 tails unconsciously patting the bed lightly. One of them accidentally slapped me in the face, soft, fluffy, with a faint, sweet fragrance. My heart is melting. Who could resist this? Su Qingyang seemed startled by her own tail and quickly tucked it away, giving it a light smack as if scolding a disobedient child. She stole another glance at me, and seeing that I was sleeping soundly, she finally relaxed and lay back down, only, she seemed to have forgotten to retract those 9 tails, leaving them casually sprawled across the bedding. One of them even draped naturally over my waist, warm, fluffy, and undeniably large. I lay there stiffly, not daring to move a muscle, afraid of startling this unaware that her disguise had slipped Fox Empress. That night, I slept exceptionally soundly, with a fox tail draped over my waist. It felt quite warm indeed. From that day onward, my observation of the Empress entered an entirely new phase. I discovered that Su Qingyan's disguises were slipping far more frequently than I had imagined. For instance, the imperial cat general in the royal garden, spoiled rotten by the late emperor to the point of daring to scratch even me, became as docile as a quail in Su Qingyan's presence. That day, as I strolled through the garden with her, General swaggered toward us with his usual disregard for all. The palace servants scattered out of his way. Just as I was about to warn Su Qingyang to be careful, I saw her merely cast a calm glance at General. General's fur instantly stood on end. The previously arrogant catwalk immediately turned into a belly crawl, and finally, it prostrated itself completely, lying flat on the ground while letting out an ingratiating meow towards Su Qingyang. Behind me, Zhao Gao's eyes nearly popped out of his head, yet I remained perfectly calm, because I understood. What Su Qingyang conveyed with that look was, if you dare act all high and mighty just because you're older again, tonight's special will be cat meat hot pot. And the general's meow translated to, my queen, I was wrong, I'll never dare again, you are my goddess. Suppressing my laughter, I said to the shocked Zhao Gao, it seems the Empress has won the general's affection. Su Qingyang smiled modestly, perhaps I carry a scent that it favors. I nodded silently in my heart. Indeed, the scent of a fox, how could a cat not go weak in the knees upon smelling it? Bloodline dominance. Do you understand? Another time, during a palace banquet, foreign tributaries presented a batch of grapes. Those grapes were crystal clear and looked incredibly sweet. Su Qingyang sat beside me, staring unblinkingly at that plate of grapes, his throat making an almost imperceptible movement. I understand, foxes also love grapes. I signaled the palace maid to bring the entire plate of grapes before the Empress. Su Qingyan's eyes instantly lit up, yet she restrained herself with great effort, elegantly picking up just one to savor in small bites. I found it utterly amusing to watch her torn between wanting to eat more and not daring to indulge. Halfway through the banquet, I excused myself and hid in the shadows to observe. To my surprise, Su Qingyang swiftly and stealthily stuffed several bunches of grapes into her wide sleeves when no one was looking. The practiced ease and natural composure with which she did it clearly marked her as a seasoned offender. I nearly burst out laughing. My Empress, in private, turns out to be such a cute sight. When the banquet ended and I returned to the palace chambers, I feigned surprise and asked, why are your sleeves so bulging, Empress? Su Qingyang stiffened, her cheeks instantly flushing crimson as she stammered, This consort found the embroidery pattern on these sleeve pockets novel, so I stuffed extra cotton padding to make them stand out more. I nearly choked on my own saliva. This excuse is utterly ridiculous. Suppressing my laughter, I stepped forward, gently lifted her sleeve, and shook out a cluster of glistening purple grapes from within. So it was cotton fluff that looked like grapes after all. I solemnly picked one up and put it in my mouth. It's quite sweet. Su Qingyan's face had turned so red it looked about to drip blood. As if she wished the ground would swallow her whole, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, on the verge of tears. My heart instantly softened. All right, I won't tease you anymore. I sighed and pulled her into my arms. Eat if you want to. You're the Empress, everything in this world is yours. Why sneak around? She leaned against my chest, trembling slightly, and whispered, This concubine has behaved improperly. I gently patted her back, feeling the softness and warmth of her body. How wonderful. My Empress is not a cold jade statue, but a living, breathing being, or rather, a yarrow, one who craves snacks, gets nervous, and blushes with shyness. And so the days passed, with me seeing through every detail and the Empress leaving flaws everywhere. I even discovered that she had secretly started a monster tea party in the backyard of the cunning palace. The participants included a century-old koi fish spirit from the imperial kitchen's pond, who had transformed into a plump, fair-skinned youth and was complaining about the recent decline in fish food quality. A weasel spirit from the library, now in the form of a shifty-eyed scholar, boasting about how it had secretly drunk the ink of a Hanlin Academy scholar the night before and felt its cultivation greatly enhanced, and even an ancient locust tree of unknown age, whose spirit form was a venerable old man leisurely sharing gossip about several generations of palace emperors. I hid in the corner, listening with great relish. Turns out the founding emperor once broke his leg falling from a tree while raiding a bird's nest in his youth. Such explosive royal gossip that history books never recorded. Su Qingyang, as the big sister, sat upright with a solemn demeanor, listening to everyone's reports while occasionally offering a few comments. Xiao Li, I'll have a word with the imperial kitchen about the fish food and get them to switch to a better quality. Fairy Huang, what's so good about drinking ink? Next time, I'll have the imperial kitchen save a roast chicken for you. Grandfather Huai, your health is still strong, so you must take good care of us younger ones in the palace. She handled these monster affairs methodically, exuding the dignified demeanor of a clan leader. I watched as she issued commands. A far cry from the dignified and gentle demeanor she displayed before the court officials, yet exuding a uniquely captivating charm. However, the peaceful days did not last long. Trouble has finally come knocking. The imperial preceptor Xian Lingzi, an old Taoist priest who dedicated his life to slaying demons and vanquishing evil, has recently been murmuring before me. He claims that by observing celestial phenomena at night, he detected overwhelming demonic aura in the palace, foreboding great calamity. Each time, I would brush him off with phrases like the Grand Tutor worries too much or this is an auspicious omen. But Xian Lingzi was as stubborn as a mule, and once he set his mind on something, not even 9 oxen could pull him back. That morning at court, he strode in boldly holding a compass, and before all the assembled officials, declared loudly, "Your Majesty, this humble daoist expended 10 years of cultivation last night and finally divined the demon's location. It lies within the inner palace. I beseech your Majesty to issue an edict allowing this humble daoist to set up an altar and perform the rites. I shall surely force the fiend to reveal its true form and restore justice to the court." The entire court was in an uproar. The civil and military officials whispered among themselves, each fearing for their own safety. My expression darkened. I sit upon the dragon throne, looking down at Xian Lingzi with a flash of murderous intent passing through my heart. But I cannot do this. Xian Lingzi enjoys immense popularity among the people and was personally appointed by the late emperor as the guardian of the state. Killing him without cause would surely stir unrest in both the court and the common folk. It seems I can only play along with him for now. After a moment of contemplation, I slowly spoke. The state preceptor speaks with such certainty. Surely you must have full confidence. Since that is the case, we shall grant permission. However, I abruptly changed the subject. If this demon truly lurks within the palace, it must be exceedingly cunning. State preceptor, whatever preparations you require for the ritual, name them freely. We shall order the imperial guards to fully cooperate with you, ensuring nothing is left to chance. Xian Lingzi was overjoyed and immediately kowtowed. Your Majesty is most wise. This humble daoist requires cinnabar, a peachwood sword, the blood of a century-old rooster. He proceeded to list a long string of items. I nodded and gave Zhao Jiao a meaningful glance. Zhao Jiao, you shall personally handle this matter. Ensure the state preceptor receives only the finest. Remember, the finest. I deliberately emphasized the words the finest. Having served me for years, Zhao Jiao immediately understood my implication. He bowed deeply and replied, "This servant obeys your command." Xian Lingzi remained completely unaware, still believing he had my absolute trust. With a smug expression, he withdrew from the chamber. After court adjourned, I watched his swaggering figure retreat into the distance, a cold smirk curling at the corner of my lips, daring to move against my Empress right under my nose. Xian Lingzi, you're still too green for this game. 3 days later, a towering altar was erected outside the cunning palace. Xian Lingzi wore a Taoist robe adorned with the 8 trigrams, holding a horsetail whisk, his demeanor ethereal and dignified. He truly looked the part of an exalted master. Behind him, Zhao Jiao led a group of young eunuchs, reverently carrying various ritual implements. I sat side by side with Su Qingyang in a nearby pavilion, both of us observing the ceremony. Su Qingyan's face was pale, his palms drenched in cold sweat. Clearly, he was tense to the extreme. I gently held her hand and whispered, "There's no need to be nervous, my queen, it's merely the state preceptor's kind gesture. Just take a look." My hand was warm, seemingly carrying a soothing power. Su Qingyan's emotions calmed slightly, though her brows remained tightly furrowed. On the ritual platform, Shen Lingzi began his performance. First, he burned a yellow talisman while murmuring incantations, following the procedure. The ashes from the burned yellow talisman should have pointed toward the direction with the strongest demonic aura. However, the ashes swirled in the air for a long time before finally making a plop sound and smearing all over Shen Lingzi's own face. Shen Lingzi, the entire scene fell into silence. Zhao Jiao suppressed a laugh and quickly handed over a towel. "Grandmaster, are you all right? Perhaps the wind is strong today." Shen Lingzi awkwardly wiped his face and forcefully explained. No matter. This is the art of deception. The demon is trying to obscure the heavenly signs." As he spoke, he picked up the peachwood sword, said to be crafted from thousand-year-old thunderstruck peachwood, and began pacing the ritual steps on the altar. The sword tip flicked up a talisman paper, tracing invisible patterns in the air. Following the procedure, the peachwood sword should have emitted a golden glow, and the talisman should have spontaneously ignited. Yet after performing the ritual for quite some time, Shen Lingzi's sword remained an ordinary sword, and the talisman stayed intact. No golden light, not even a single spark. He tried several more times until sweat poured from his brow, but the talisman simply refused to catch fire. The officials below began whispering among themselves, Is the state preceptor really capable of this? Looks a bit questionable." Shen Lingzi's face turned the color of pig liver, gritting his teeth. He grabbed a bowl of century-old rooster blood nearby, took a big gulp, then spat it onto the talisman paper with a phut. This time, the talisman paper did get wet, but it still wouldn't ignite. Instead, Shen Lingzi seemed to be choking on something, breaking into violent coughs while shouting between gasps, "Water, water, so spicy." Zhao Jiao promptly handed over water, maintaining an innocent expression as he said, "Grand Preceptor, this is the century-old rooster blood you personally verified. We specifically sought out the oldest rooster in the palace. The flavor is indeed rather pungent. Please bear with it." I nearly crushed the teacup in my hand while sitting in the pavilion. That slave Zhao Jiao is truly a talent. I told him to prepare the best, and he certainly didn't disappoint me. That cinnabar was actually made from red flour mixed with a bit of chili powder. The peachwood sword was just an ordinary branch cut from the imperial garden, coated with a layer of tung oil. As for the so-called century-old rooster blood, it was actually red pigment water mixed with a large amount of chili oil. Shen Lingzi was so overwhelmed by the spiciness that tears streamed down his face, completely ruining his image of an immortal sage. Watching his entire set of top-tier magical instruments fail one after another, he stood dumbfounded on the altar, muttering to himself, "Impossible, absolutely impossible. How could my spells have failed?" As this demon-catching assembly was about to turn into a farce, I thought it was time for me to step in. I cleared my throat, slowly rose to my feet, and declared in a clear voice, "The state preceptor has worked hard." All eyes turned to me. I walked up to the altar, looking at the disheveled Shen Lingzi with a compassionate smile. "State preceptor, do not take it to heart. Just now, I saw celestial phenomena, rays of auspicious light filling the sky. It seems there are no demons in the palace, but rather a divine blessing. Heaven, moved by our dynasty's peace and prosperity, has sent us this sign to warn us not to disturb its tranquility." As I spoke, I pointed towards the sky. The sky was completely clear, without a single cloud. The crowd, Shen Lingzi was also stunned. He looked up at the sky, then back at me, his face full of bewilderment, with an unchanged expression. I continued, "The state preceptor's profound mastery of the Tao must have sensed this very auspicious energy. It's just that the auspicious energy was too overwhelming, momentarily overwhelming the state preceptor's magical instruments, hence this unusual phenomenon. This is not the state preceptor's fault, but rather proof of his deep cultivation in the Tao." My words were spoken with genuine emotion and resounded with conviction. Shen Lingzi was completely baffled by my reasoning. He stood there dazed, pondering for a long while, As if it did make sense. Exactly. It's not that my magic is ineffective, but that the auspicious aura is too powerful. Suddenly enlightened, he looked at me with eyes full of gratitude and admiration, immediately bowing in salute. Your Majesty is truly wise. This humble Taoist was indeed foolish. So this is a divine blessing from heaven, and I nearly offended the gods. What a grave mistake. The entire court of civil and military officials chimed in unison. So it's an auspicious sign. That explains it. Your Majesty is truly destined by heaven. Even the skies have sent down this divine blessing. The grand astrologer is indeed formidable. To have sensed this celestial omen, a farcical demon-hunting spectacle was forcibly transformed by my imperial decree into a grand celebration of heavenly favor and virtuous rule. I gazed upon all this with satisfaction. Then turned to look at Su Qingyang. She was looking at me with an extremely complex expression. In her eyes, there was shock, confusion, bewilderment, and a trace of indescribable warmth. I smiled faintly at her. Some things were better left unsaid. After the turmoil subsided, I rewarded the imperial preceptor with a heap of gold, silver, and jewels under the pretext of his auspicious omens having merited recognition. Then ordered him to enter seclusion for spiritual cultivation to consolidate his realm, forbidding him from emerging for at least a year or two. At last, that troublesome Taoist was dealt with. That very night, I went to the cunning palace again. After dismissing all attendants, only Su Qingyang and I remained in the bedchamber. She lowered her head, brewing tea for me, yet her movements carried a hint of hesitation. Today's matter, thank you, Your Majesty, for coming to my aid, she finally spoke. Her voice very soft. I picked up the teacup, blew gently on the steam, and said indifferently, the Empress is my wife. Is it not only natural that I protect you? Su Qingyang suddenly looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She gazed at me, her lips trembling as if wanting to speak, yet ultimately remaining silent. I didn't press her further. I knew the hardest shell around her heart had already begun to crack. I set down the teacup and walked over to her. Reaching out to gently brush behind her ear, there, 2 little tufts of white hair had once again failed to resist, quietly peeking out, soft and ticklish. Su Qingyang's body stiffened, freezing completely in place. I could feel her breath halt. My fingers lingered behind her ear for a moment, then, under her terrified gaze, slowly slid down to rest at the small of her back. Gently, in a tentative tone, I asked, may I touch you? Su Qingyang's body instantly stiffened like a rock. Her eyes widened as she stared at me in disbelief, as if looking at a madman. The air froze, and the bedchamber was so quiet you could hear each other's heartbeats. My heart raced wildly, filled with both tension and anticipation. Her face visibly flushed, the redness spreading from her cheeks down to her neck, until even the tips of her ears turned pink. Why, Your Majesty, what are you saying? Her voice stuttered, as thin as a wisp of smoke, almost on the verge of shattering. Watching her flustered, utterly at a loss, that mischievous urge in my heart rose again. Not only did I not withdraw my hand, I even gave her lower back a gentle pat, my tone growing even softer. I said, may I touch your tail? Boom. Su Qingyang's mind probably exploded. She staggered back 2 steps as if struck by lightning, staring at me in horror, her eyes filled with the despair of why you. How did you know? I watched her leisurely, a faint smile playing at the corners of my lips. Little fox, if I don't give you a taste of something strong, are you really planning to keep pretending with me forever? You, she pointed at me, stammering you, for what felt like ages without managing another word. The next second, something astonishing happened. Perhaps from overwhelming emotion, a thunderous boom sounded behind her as those 9 magnificent tails I'd been longing for burst forth uncontrollably, snow-white, fluffy, and enormous. They instantly filled all the space behind her, with a few strands even standing on end nervously due to their owner's unstable emotions. Like a startled cat, the tails had puffed up. My eyes instantly went wide. In the royal garden during the day, it was just a fleeting glimpse, and later in bed, I could only feel them through the quilt. But now, these 9 legendary tails were displayed before me without any concealment, more beautiful and breathtaking than imagined. Su Qingyang clearly hadn't anticipated this either. She looked down, let out a short cry of surprise, and hurriedly tried to retract her tail. but the more flustered she became, the more chaotic things got. Those 9 tails seemed to have a mind of their own, wildly fluttering in the air. Put them away, quickly put them away. She was so frantic she nearly cried, clumsily grabbing at her own tail. The scene looked exactly like a person wrestling with their 9 mischievous children, utter chaos and hilarity. I finally couldn't hold back and burst out with a fit of laughter. That laugh made Su Qingyang freeze mid-motion. She stared blankly at me, her eyes red-rimmed, her face full of grievance and despair, as if saying, "You already know, and you're still laughing at me." I put away my smile, sighed, and stepped forward. She instinctively retreated, her eyes filled with vigilance and unease. In her view, with her identity exposed, what awaited her might be the Taoist priest's peachwood sword and a cold prison cell. I stood before her, not taking another step forward. I reached out my hand, not to grab her, but to gently, cautiously, touch the tip of the nearest tail. That sensation. It was smoother than the finest cloud-patterned brocade, softer than the warmest fox fur in winter. My heart was filled with an indescribable sense of satisfaction in that instant. Finally, I touched it. Su Qingyang trembled all over, as if struck by an electric current. She could feel a warm sensation spreading from the tip of her tail. It was the Emperor's warmth. She didn't dodge, she just stood there in a daze, letting my hand slowly stroke upward from the tip of her tail. I could feel the stiffness in her body gradually easing. "Very beautiful," I sincerely exclaimed, "even more beautiful than I had imagined." This was no mere compliment, but my genuine sentiment. Su Qingyang's eyes reddened further, and bean-sized tears rolled down unexpectedly. She was crying, not because of fear, but because of grievance, unease, and a trace of emotion she hadn't even noticed herself, the warmth of being accepted. You're not afraid of me?" she asked with a sob. "I'm a monster, afraid." I smiled. "I am the Son of Heaven, possessing all under heaven. Everything in this world is my subject. You are my Empress. Whether human or demon, this will never change." My hand gently encircled one of her tails, feeling the fluffy texture. Moreover, I paused, leaning close to her ear and whispering in a voice only the two of us could hear, "My Empress is so adorable, how could I possibly be afraid when I can't get enough of her?" Su Qingyang's body softened as she leaned into my embrace, burying her face against my chest. The sobs she had suppressed for so long finally broke free. She cried like a child, as if releasing all the pretense and fear she had carried for the past 3 years in one overwhelming outburst. I held her in my arms, letting her cry, while my hands rather shamelessly took turns stroking each of the other 8 tails. They all felt equally wonderful. When she finally finished crying, her emotions gradually settled. She raised her reddened eyes, looked at me, and asked softly, "Your Majesty, when did you find out?" After some thought, I decided to be honest. "When you were lecturing that little white fox." Su Qingyang's face instantly flushed red again. "Then, what about the roast chicken?" "Indeed, I did it on purpose." "Then, the grapes, I saw you hiding them in your sleeve." "Then, the imperial preceptor, I had all his ritual implements replaced." Su Qingyang, her mouth hung open for a long moment, speechless. Her expression shifted from shock to sudden realization, and finally to utter despair. She probably felt that for these past 3 years, she had been like a clownish performer leaping about the stage, with the only audience being this emperor before her, who was clearly suppressing laughter while watching her act, glaring at me indignantly. She even gave an angry flick of her tail behind her, which happened to smack me right across the face. With a loud smack, it didn't hurt, but the sound was sharp. I froze in shock. Su Qingyang also froze. She stared at her assaulting tail, then looked at me in panic before hurriedly retracting all her tails. I didn't mean to," she hastily explained. I touched my face, not angry at all, but instead smiled even more brightly. "It's fine." Taking her hand, I pulled her back into my embrace. "My Empress has finally dared to be willful with me. This is what a married couple should truly be like." After our identities were fully revealed, the relationship between me and Su Qingyang entered a brand new, honeyed phase. She no longer deliberately concealed her true nature. Though she remained the dignified Empress in public, she increasingly let her true self shine in my presence. For instance, she would unabashedly devour a whole plate of roast chicken until her mouth was greasy, then gaze at me with pleading eyes, waiting for me to wipe her lips clean. For instance, while reviewing memorials, she would release all 9 tails and spread them across my dragon throne. Serving as the most luxurious and warmest plush cushion for me, my chronic back pain was miraculously cured just like that. Or take another example, she would drag me along to attend her monster tea parties. When I first attended as a family member, I gave those little monsters quite a fright. The koi spirit plopped back into its original form, hiding at the bottom of the water vat and blowing bubbles. The weasel spirit whooshed into a crack in the ground, leaving only its tiny head trembling in fear. Only the old locust tree spirit remained somewhat composed, shakily bowing to me. "This old one pays respects to your majesty." Su Qingyang planted her hands on her hips with the air of a boss lady. "What's there to fear? This is my husband, one of us, me." Although the title Xianggong was quite flattering, this one of us situation still left me somewhat torn between laughter and tears. Under Su Qingyang's tutelage, I quickly became acquainted with these non-human residents of the palace. I discovered irregularities in the procurement of ingredients for the imperial kitchen, reported by the koi spirit, and promptly reprimanded the head of the imperial household department the next day, upon learning that several rare books from the previous dynasty in the imperial library had been damaged by insects, as reported by the weasel spirit. I immediately ordered the Hanlin Academy to restore them. I even heard more gossip about our ancestors from the ancient locust tree spirit, which added considerable amusement to my imperial career. I've discovered that being an emperor who can communicate with monsters seems not so bad after all. At least when it comes to intelligence gathering, I possess unique advantages that none of my imperial predecessors ever had. In the imperial court, I remain the same awe-inspiring sovereign. Returning to the inner palace, I become a blissful indulgent ruler surrounded by fluffy tails. I've even discovered new uses for these tails. When summer heat becomes unbearable, I have Su Qingyang fan me with her tails, completely natural, with adjustable wind strength. When winter's chill sets in, I bundle her entire being along with all 9 tails beneath the blankets, creating what must be the world's finest heating furnace. When tired from reviewing memorials, he could still grab a tail to use as a pillow. Its texture was excellent, providing perfect stress relief. Su Qingyang would complain verbally, saying, "Your Majesty truly lacks restraint," but his body was honest, obediently offering his tail every time. However, such blissful and peaceful days were ultimately shattered. An urgent report arrived from the northern border. The neighboring state of Northern Yang suddenly launched a large-scale invasion. Northern Yang had always been a barbaric nation, strong in military power and cavalry, but lacking in strategic intelligence. In previous years, they had only conducted minor harassments, never daring to invade on such a massive scale. This time, however, the situation was entirely different. The urgent 800 Li report from the border garrison was written in blood-red characters. The enemy has sorcerers aiding their forces. They can summon wind and rain, turn beings into soldiers. Our troops have suffered heavy casualties. 3 cities have fallen consecutively, and we stand on the brink of disaster. Sorcerers. The emperor's brow furrowed deeply. At the morning court, the ministers were in an uproar. The war faction spoke passionately, pleading for reinforcements to be sent to the northern border, vowing to fight the Northern Yang to the death. The peace faction, however, was deeply troubled, believing that the sorcerer's dark arts were beyond mortal resistance and that they should temporarily retreat to avoid confrontation, biding their time for future plans. I watched the civil and military officials below me bickering in chaos, my heart turning cold. They could summon wind and rain, and turn beings into soldiers. This is no longer a force that mortal armies can contend against. To send troops now would only add to the casualties in vain, Your Majesty. The Minister of War stepped forward, impassioned. I am willing to personally lead 100,000 troops north to resist the enemy. Even if I should perish on the battlefield, I will not allow the Northern Yang barbarians to set foot in our heartland. Lord Zhong's loyalty and bravery are commendable. The Prime Minister shook his head and sighed, but the sorcerer's dark arts are unfathomable, beyond what mere military might can overcome, in this old minister's humble opinion. It would be better to send an envoy to negotiate peace and probe the enemy's true strength. Peace negotiations. Does the Chancellor wish our dynasty to surrender without a fight? Minister Zhong, I am considering the lives of our dynasty's soldiers. The court erupted into arguments once more, irritated. I slammed the dragon throne. Enough. The great hall fell silent in an instant. I rubbed my temples as a face surfaced in my mind. Xian Lingzi, though his last demon hunt turned into a farce. He was after all the kingdom's guardian mage. Perhaps he'd have a way to deal with such evil forces. I immediately issued the decree, summoned the state preceptor Xian Lingzi from seclusion to discuss state affairs. Xian Lingzi, whom I had ordered into seclusion for over half a year, was finally released. He appeared somewhat thinner, yet more spirited than before. When he saw me, he still maintained that immortal demeanor, aloof and inscrutable. I showed him the military reports from the northern frontier. After reading it, Xian Lingzi stroked his beard with a furrowed brow, summoning winds and rains, turning beings into soldiers. These are mere unorthodox arts. Though they may have form, they lack true essence. Nothing to fear. The emperor perked up. Does the state preceptor have a strategy? Xian Lingzi smiled proudly. Your Majesty need not worry. This humble daoist has cultivated for centuries, specializing in countering such wicked heresies. A mere northern Yang sorcerer. Allow me to make a personal visit, and I shall reduce him to ashes. His words brimmed with such confidence that even the court officials felt a glimmer of hope rekindle. Though I still harbored lingering fears about his previous performance, there was no better candidate at hand. All right, I immediately made the decision, declaring, we hereby appoint the state preceptor as the Grand Marshal of Demon Subjugation, specially granting him the imperial sword to take full command of the war against Northern Yang. The treasury will fully support all necessary resources. Xian Lingzi was overjoyed, accepting the decree with gratitude. That very day, he packed his belongings and, accompanied by his numerous disciples, set off in grand procession to the northern front. Watching his retreating figure, a faint unease lingered in my heart. Returning to the inner palace, Su Qingyang had been waiting for a long time. She had clearly also heard about the events at the front lines, her face filled with worry. Your Majesty, that Northern Yang sorcerer is likely no ordinary foe. She spoke softly. I nodded. I know. But Xian Lingzi is our dynasty's only hope now. Su Qingyang bit her lip, as if wanting to say something, but ultimately it dissolved into a sigh. She walked behind me and extended her 9 tails, gently wrapping them around me. The fluffy touch, carrying her unique fragrance, slightly soothed my restless heart. Whatever happens, this humble consort will always stay by your Majesty's side. She leaned against my back, her voice resolute. I clasped her hand in mine, warmth flooding my heart. Indeed, even if the heavens were to collapse, I wouldn't be facing it alone. However, my premonition soon came true. Half a month later, what came from the northern border was not news of victory, but a plea for help from Xian Lingzi. In the letter, Xian Lingzi's handwriting was scrawled and filled with terror. He said that the northern Yang sorcerer Wu Xin possessed unimaginably powerful magic, and all his spells were like child's play before the opponent. Most of the disciples he had taken with him were either dead or wounded, and he himself was severely injured, trapped within Yangmen Pass, living from day to day with no certainty of survival. Along with the letter came Xian Lingzi's broken whisk, snapped in two, and his tattered 8 trigrams Taoist robe, scorched and torn. The entire court was shaken. Even the national guardian priest was no match for him. Just who was this northern Yang sorcerer? For a time, panic spread among the people, and the voices of the peace faction once again gained the upper hand. Some even proposed ceding 3 cities to northern Yang as a plea for peace, hoping to secure tranquility. I slammed that memorial violently onto the ground, ceding territory to beg for peace. What utter humiliation! I was furious beyond measure. Not a single inch of our dynasty's land shall be yielded. Yet, if we refuse to sue for peace, what other options remain? Must we truly stand by and watch as Yangmen Pass falls, allowing the northern Yang cavalry to charge straight in? During those days, I could neither eat nor sleep in peace, my hair turning white from sheer anxiety. Su Qingyang silently stayed by my side, no longer amusing me with her tale, but quietly refilling my tea and grinding ink for me instead. I knew she was more anxious than I was. Finally, on a late night when I was pacing restlessly in the imperial study over battle reports again, Su Qingyang tugged at my sleeve. Your Majesty, she looked at me with an unprecedented gravity in her eyes. Let this humble consort go. I was stunned. What did you say? I doubted my own hearing. Su Qingyang took a deep breath and repeated, let this consort go to the northern frontier. Perhaps this humble one has a way to deal with that demonic priest. I didn't even think about it and firmly refused. No, absolutely not. What a joke, letting an empress go to the perilous battlefield. How could I possibly agree to that? Qingyang, stop fooling around. My tone was stern. The battlefield is no playground, swords have no eyes. Your Majesty, I'm not fooling around. Su Qingyang interrupted me, her gaze burning with an undeniable intensity. Have you forgotten who I am? Of course I haven't forgotten. She is a nine-tailed fox, an ancient divine beast, the ruler of Qingqiu. But in my heart, she is first and foremost my wife, the one I must protect for the rest of my life. That won't do either. My attitude was resolute. You are the Empress. Your duty is to set a virtuous example for the realm, not to charge into battle. But if the country ceases to exist, what will become of the realm? What meaning would the title of Empress hold then? Su Qingyang retorted. I was left speechless by her question. She took my hand, her tone softening. Your Majesty, I know you're worried about me, but that demonic priest who easily defeated Shen Lingzi is no ordinary cultivator. Mortal armies are utterly ineffective against him. If this continues, our dynasty will be in grave danger. I am a nine-tailed fox, having cultivated for 1,000 years, not some helpless maiden who can't even tie a chicken's legs. Dealing with demonic practitioners is precisely our expertise. Let me go. At least I stand a fighting chance. If even I fail, then it must be heaven's will. Her words struck deep into my heart, each syllable resonating with painful clarity. Reason tells me she is right. This is the only way, the last hope, yet emotionally, I simply cannot accept it, gazing into her resolute eyes. My heart wages an inner war. After a long while, I closed my eyes and let out a deep sigh. How confident are you? Su Qingyang smiled, a smile so confident and radiant it seemed capable of dispelling all gloom. 100%. In the end, I agreed, but I set one condition. I would personally accompany her. Su Qingyang naturally objected, but this time, it was my turn to stand firm. You are my Empress, and I am your husband. Husband and wife are one. There's no reason for you to face danger alone while I sit safely behind. I looked at her and said word by word, either we go together, or no one goes at all. Su Qingyang couldn't resist me and had no choice but to agree. I immediately issued an edict, under the pretense of the Son of Heaven personally leading the campaign to boost morale, to assemble a light cavalry that would set off for the northern border that very day, to avoid unnecessary panic. Su Qingyang's identity was kept strictly confidential. To the outside world, she is merely a female attendant by my side. Before departure, I summoned Zhao Jiao. After I leave the capital, state affairs shall be overseen by the Crown Prince, with the Prime Minister assisting. You shall remain in the palace to guard our home in my stead. Zhao Jiao knelt on the ground, tears streaming down his aged face. Your Majesty, this must not be. Your person is worth 10,000 pieces of gold. How can you risk yourself in such danger? I patted his shoulder. Zhao Jiao, this time I'm not going as an emperor, but as a husband. Do you understand? Zhao Jiao froze. He looked at me, then glanced at the Empress standing not far behind me, now dressed in martial attire, radiating heroic vigor, and seemed to comprehend something. He kowtowed heavily. This servant obeys the decree. May your Majesty and Her Highness achieve swift victory and return triumphant. The army set forth. I shared the carriage with Su Qingyang, having shed her elaborate palace attire and donned a sleek riding outfit. Su Qingyang exuded a unique charm. She was no longer the delicate empress who needed my protection, but a valiant warrior ready for battle. Inside the carriage, she was resting with her eyes closed, 9 tails naturally unfurled, filling the entire carriage, with one of them quite considerately draping over my lap, serving as a fur blanket. I stroked the smooth fur, yet my heart was filled with worry. Qingyang, she opened her eyes. That northern Yang sorcerer Wu Xin. Do you know him? Su Qingyang's eyes flickered briefly before he shook his head. No, but to possess such profound cultivation, he can't be an unknown figure. Perhaps, some reclusive old monster. We always feel she seems to be hiding something from us. But since she won't speak of it, we shouldn't press the matter. They traveled day and night, enduring the hardships of the road. 10 days later, they finally arrived at Yangmen Pass. The sight before them made everyone gasp in shock. The once majestic fortress now lay in ruins, its walls broken and crumbling. The city walls were covered with marks from sword slashes and axe chops, along with some charred, gaping holes that looked as if they had been struck by lightning. Inside the city, desolation reigned. The soldiers all looked gaunt and malnourished, their morale at rock bottom. Our arrival did little to lift their spirits. Instead, it seemed to evoke more numbness than hope. Xian Lingzi was helped out to greet me. He had aged at least 20 years, covered in wounds and utterly dispirited, with not a trace left of his former glory as the demon-subduing Grand Marshal. At the sight of me, he fell to his knees with a thud, wailing, "Your Majesty, this humble daoist is incompetent. I deserve 10,000 deaths." I helped him up and asked gravely, "That demonic priest, what exactly is his origin?" Xian Lingzi said with lingering fear, He's not human, he's a complete and utter monster. His demonic arts are too sinister." At that very moment, an extremely arrogant burst of laughter echoed from outside the city walls. Well, looks like a big shot has arrived. What's the matter?" Xian Lingzi couldn't handle the old one. "So you called for an even older one to die in your place?" A chilling voice, as if it could pierce through the city walls, reached everyone's ears with perfect clarity. Everyone's expressions changed dramatically. "It's him, the Northern Yang sorcerer, Wu Xin." The Emperor and Su Qingyang ascended the city tower. Beyond the city walls, before the vast and dark Northern Yang army, a man clad in a black robe stood suspended in mid-air. His face was handsome, yet carried an air of malevolence. With a pair of eerie, blood-red eyes, he was Wu Xin. Around him swirled masses of black mist, within which faintly writhed countless distorted and struggling ghostly figures. "Who goes there? State your name." Wu Xin looked at us with disdain, his gaze lingering for a moment on my dragon robes before settling on Su Qingyang beside me. When he saw Su Qingyang's face, the smile on his face froze. Then, that smile twisted into something frenzied and fanatical. "It's you, it's actually you." He stared fixedly at Su Qingyang, his voice trembling with agitation. "The Lord of Qingqiu, Su Qingyang, I've searched for you for 300 years. Never did I imagine you'd be hiding here, playing the role of a mortal's empress." Su Qingyang's expression instantly turned icy. She took a step forward, standing opposite Wu Xin at a distance, her voice as cold as snow. "Wu Xin, 300 years ago, you betrayed Qingqiu, stole our sacred artifact, the soul-devouring pearl, and slaughtered your fellow disciples. Out of pity for your hard-earned cultivation, I merely stripped you of half your power and banished you from the sect. Never did I expect you to remain unrepentant, only to grow worse, wreaking havoc upon the mortal realm here." My heart was in turmoil. So, they knew each other. Wu Xin was actually Su Qingyang's junior fellow disciple. Wu Xin seemed to have heard the most absurd joke, bursting into maniacal laughter. "Ha ha ha ha, Su Qingyang. You're still so high and mighty. Back then, what right did you have to become the ruler of Qingqiu? In terms of talent, in terms of ability, in what way was I inferior to you? Just because you're the clan leader's daughter, just because your bloodline is pure, I stole the soul-devouring pearl precisely to prove to everyone that I, Wu Xin, am more suited to be the king of Qingqiu than you." His eyes were filled with jealousy and resentment. Su Qingyang sighed, her gaze revealing a trace of pity. "Wu Xin, you're mistaken. Power has never been the measure of all things. You're obsessed with the dark energy of the soul-devouring pearl. You've long lost your way beyond redemption." "Enough talk," Wu Xin roared with a ferocious expression. "Today, we settle this between us. I will reduce you, that mortal emperor behind you, and this wretched city to ashes." As soon as the words left his mouth, the black mist behind him surged violently, transforming into countless snarling, clawing demons that blotted out the sky as they charged toward Yangmen Pass. On the city walls, all the soldiers paled in terror, stumbling backward in fear. Xian Lingzi let out a shriek and collapsed to the ground. Instinctively, I shielded Su Qingyang behind me, yet Su Qingyang pushed me aside. She stepped forward, walking straight toward the horde of malevolent spirits until she reached the very edge of the city wall. The wind lifted her long hair and fluttered her sleeves. Amidst the horrified gazes of the crowd, Behind her, with a resounding boom, 9 snow-white, sacred fox tails erupted into the sky. In that moment, heaven and earth paled in comparison. The 9 colossal fox tails unfurled like 9 white divine dragons, stretching across the heavens. Each tail emitted a soft and holy white glow. That radiance formed a stark and intense contrast with Wu Xin's sinister black mist on the city walls. All the soldiers were stunned, their mouths hung open as they forgot their fear, gazing dumbstruck at the figure who seemed like a deity descended to earth. Nine-tailed fox, Xian Lingzi murmured to himself, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. The legendary, divine beast, at last. He understood why all his spells had been ineffective against the Empress. It wasn't that his magic had failed, it was simply that he was utterly unworthy to display his meager skills before a divine beast. Wu Xin outside the city was also overwhelmed by this powerful divine aura. The madness on his face faded, replaced by deep apprehension. Impossible! How could your power have grown so much stronger than 300 years ago? He roared hoarsely. Su Qingyang did not answer him. She merely raised her hand slightly and pointed a finger into the air at the overwhelming tide of malevolent spirits. One of the tails behind her lashed out like a white whip. Boom! A visible white light wave swept out. Wherever the light wave reached, those ferocious evil spirits melted like snow and ice, instantly turning into wisps of smoke and vanishing without a trace. With just one strike, it shattered Wu Xin's night parade of 100 demons. Clean and decisive, Wu Xin's expression changed dramatically as he formed hand seals and muttered incantations under his breath. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, accompanied by flashes of lightning and rumbles of thunder. 9 heavens profound thunder, heed my command. A black lightning bolt as thick as a barrel tore through the heavens, carrying an aura of utter destruction as it came crashing down upon Su Qingyan's head. Your Majesty, be careful, Empress. The soldiers on the city wall let out terrified cries. My heart leaped into my throat, yet Su Qingyang merely lifted her head. Gazing calmly at the apocalyptic black lightning bolt without a ripple of emotion in her eyes, she extended her second tail, curling it upward with a gentle flick. That tail, as if possessing a life of its own, instantly expanded into a colossal white canopy, enveloping the entire Yangmen Pass. Boom! The black lightning struck the white canopy with brutal force, unleashing an earth-shattering roar. The entire Yangmen Pass was shaking violently. Yet that seemingly thin layer of white celestial curtain remained indestructible. The power of the black lightning was completely blocked, leaving the city unharmed. Absolutely not. Wu Xin was utterly panicked. His 2 proudest skills were effortlessly neutralized by Su Qingyang with such nonchalance. Wu Xin, don't you understand yet? Su Qingyan's voice echoed across the entire battlefield. Power obtained through external means is ultimately illusory. You've long been corrupted by the soul-devouring pearl and have become its slave. Shut up, shut up, Wu Xin roared madly, as if having made some resolute decision, and suddenly struck his own chest with a forceful slap. A pitch-black bead, exuding an ominous aura, slowly emerged from his mouth. It was none other than the sacred artifact of Qingqiu, the soul-devouring pearl. Su Qingyang, you forced me into this. A glint of determination flashed in Wu Xin's eyes. Today, I'll show you the true power of the soul-devouring pearl. I shall use your divine soul as an offering to my supreme path. He spread his arms wide, and his entire being began merging with that very soul-devouring pearl. A pillar of black light shot into the heavens. Wu Xin's body twisted and expanded within the black radiance, ultimately transforming into a colossal demon god 10 zhong tall, with a ghastly green face, fanged teeth, and 3 heads with 6 arms. An evil aura 10 times more powerful than before swept across the entire battlefield. The earth trembled, and the heavens wailed. The walls of Yangmen Pass began to crack under this terrifying pressure. Ha 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 ha! The demon god let out a heaven-shaking roar of laughter. Su Qingyang, feel this despair. His 6 arms simultaneously brandished weapons condensed from dark energy, smashing toward Su Qingyang. This time, a trace of solemnity finally appeared on Su Qingyan's face. She knew this was Wu Xin's final strike, paid for with his very life. Your Majesty, step back. With a soft cry, the 7 remaining tails behind her simultaneously burst into dazzling radiance. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, violet, 7 tails, 7 colors. 7-colored divine light intertwined behind her, forming a vast and mysterious magic array. Qingqiu secret art, 7 luminaries demon-slaying array. Su Qingyang formed hand seals while chanting ancient and sacred incantations. The enormous 7-colored array surged forward to meet the demon god's attack. Boom, boom, boom. The entire world seemed reduced to nothing but the clash of black and white, the confrontation between the sacred and the evil. Each collision made the heavens and earth change color. The scattered energy flattened the surrounding mountains and rocks into barren land. The soldiers on the city walls were already speechless, stunned by this godlike battle unfolding before them. I gripped the railing of the city wall tightly, my knuckles turning white from the force. My gaze was firmly locked on the white figure at the center of the battlefield, enveloped in 7-colored divine light. Qingyang, you must win. The power of the demon god was violent and domineering. Su Qingyan's magic array was intricate and resilient. For a time, the two sides were evenly matched in their battle. However, I could see that Su Qingyan's face was growing increasingly pale. Activating such a powerful formation took a tremendous toll on her, yet the demon god seemed tireless. It's useless, Su Qingyang. The demon god laughed maniacally. Before the power of the soul-devouring pearl, all your struggles are in vain. His arm suddenly broke through the defensive barrier, transforming into a massive black ghostly claw that lunged straight for Su Qingyan's heart. Look out, everyone gasped in shock. If this strike landed, the consequences would be unthinkable. At this critical moment, a flash of determination crossed Su Qingyan's eyes. She did not dodge. Instead, she withdrew all her defenses, allowing the ghostly claw to strike at.
How could the Empress have suffered such severe injuries? Xian Lingzi did not dodge. Allowing the teacup to smash against his head, blood streaming down, he knelt on the ground, kowtowing heavily. This guilty subject would die 10,000 deaths without regret. I gazed at Su Qingyan's paper-pale face on the bed, my heart filled with endless remorse and despair. It was my fault. It's all my fault for being so useless. If only I were stronger, if only I had seen through Wu Xin's schemes earlier, she wouldn't have had to risk her life for me, wouldn't have had to suffer like this. I dismissed everyone and kept solitary vigil by her bedside, clutching her icy hand. I called her name over and over again. Qingyang, wake up, look at me. You love roast chicken, don't you? I'll have the imperial kitchen make it for you every day. You like my dragon throne, don't you? I'll let you use it as your cushion from now on. I haven't had enough of touching your tail yet. Please wake up, let me stroke it again, won't you? My voice, from pleading to choking, and finally to uncontrollable sobbing. 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 day, 2 days. She never opened her eyes again. Her body grew colder and colder. I know, my Empress is truly leaving me. Just as my heart turned to ashes and I prepared to follow her in death, a snow-white little fox emerged from nowhere. It was that same white fox I had seen in the Imperial Garden. It leaped onto the bed, circled Su Qingyan's body several times, and let out mournful chirping sounds. Then, it turned its head and looked at me with those obsidian-like eyes. From its mouth, it spat out a cyan-colored pearl emitting a soft glow. With its front paw, it pushed that pearl toward me. I was stunned. What is this? The little white fox chirped twice again, pointing at the bead with its paw before gesturing towards Su Qingyan's chest. A sudden realization struck me. I instantly understood its meaning. Is this something that can save lives? My hands trembling, I picked up that azure bead. The bead felt warm and smooth to the touch, radiating a tremendous vitality. Without hesitation, I carefully loosened Su Qingyan's collar and gently placed the bead over the wound on her chest. A miracle occurred. The azure bead, upon touching Su Qingyan's skin, instantly transformed into a gentle blue light and merged into her body. A faint flush gradually appeared on her pale face. Her cold body also began to warm slowly, though she hadn't yet awakened. I could sense her life force steadily recovering bit by bit. It works, it really works. Overjoyed, I hugged the little white fox tightly and planted a big kiss on it. Thank you, thank you. The little white fox seemed somewhat disdainful as it wiped its face with its paw, then jumped off the bed and quickly disappeared without a trace. I knew those were Su Qingyan's kin. It was the Fox clan from Qingqiu, secretly aiding us. I took Su Qingyan's hand once more, and this time, her hand was no longer cold. I pressed her hand against my face, tears falling once more. This time, they were tears of joy. Whisper, my queen, you will not leave me. We still have a long, long road to walk together. Half a month later, the army returned in triumph, the Northern Yang sorcerer Wu Xin was executed, and the king of Northern Yang was so terrified that he submitted a surrender letter overnight, pledging eternal allegiance and promising never to invade again. My imperial expedition concluded with a resounding and decisive victory. The whole nation rejoiced, yet what concerned me most was the still unconscious Empress lying in the imperial carriage. Upon returning to the capital, I held no victory banquet, but directly sent Su Qingyang back to the Cunning Palace, ordering all imperial physicians to take turns attending to her. At the same time, I imposed a gag order regarding that battle. Officially, it was declared that the national protector mage, Xian Lingzi, and I collaborated from within and without, employing supreme daoist magic to slay the demonic sorcerer. As for the Empress, she fell into a coma due to overexertion while praying for blessings in the rear. I do not want her identity as a nine-tailed fox to become the focus of public discussion. She is my wife, and it is my duty to protect her. Xian Lingzi had no objections to this. After that battle, he seemed to have seen through the vanity of mortal life and submitted his resignation to me, saying he wished to wander the world in search of the true Tao. I granted his request. Days passed, yet Su Qingyang still did not wake, but her body, nourished by the Qingqiu treasure life creation pearl, had recovered remarkably well. Her complexion was rosy, her breathing steady, as if she were merely asleep. After attending to state affairs, I spent all my remaining time by her side. I told her amusing stories from the court, read her folk tales from the common people, and described to her the new villa I had built for her, filled with grapevines. I also brought the imperial cat General to the Cunning Palace. Without Su Qingyang's bloodline suppression, General reverted to its lawless ways, nearly scratching my dragon robe. That was until I pulled out one of Su Qingyang's tails from under the quilt. Her tails would uncontrollably emerge when she was unconscious. At the sight of that fluffy tail, General instantly bristled, let out a meow, and bolted faster than a rabbit. I looked at that familiar tail, smiled, and tucked it back under the blanket. Another month passed. On a sunny afternoon, I sat by the bed peeling an apple for Su Qingyang. Suddenly, I felt the hand I was holding move slightly. My movements froze instantly. I abruptly raised my head to look at the person on the bed. There, the eyes I had longed for day and night were slowly opening. Her gaze was somewhat dazed at first, but gradually focused as she recognized me before her. Your Majesty. Her voice was hoarse, yet like the sound of heavenly music. The apple and knife in my hand clattered to the ground. I rushed to the bedside, gripping her hand tightly. Too overwhelmed to speak, I could only nod repeatedly. We are. Su Qingyang looked at me, her eyes slowly reddening. She reached out and gently touched my face, feeling the stubble on my chin and the fine wrinkles at the corners of my eyes. You have lost weight, she said with a pained heart. I could no longer hold back and tightly embraced her, as if wanting to meld her into my very bones and blood. Welcome back, my queen. After a long while, we finally parted. Su Qingyang leaned against the headboard, and behind her, 9 tails quietly emerged, enveloping both of us. She looked at me and suddenly grinned mischievously. Your Majesty, while I was unconscious, I seemed to hear someone say they'd give me the dragon throne as a cushion. My face flushed red. You misheard, she added. I also heard someone say they hadn't had enough of touching my tails. My face grew even redder as I cleared my throat. The wind was too loud. I didn't hear clearly. Su Qingyang smiled like a fox that had stolen its prey. She took the initiative to grab my hand and placed it on one of her tails, then leaned close to my ear, her breath as fragrant as orchids. Then, shall I let you touch to your heart's content now? The sunlight filtered through the window lattice, casting a warm and tranquil glow upon us. I gazed at the mischievous smile and overflowing affection in her eyes, feeling my heart soften completely. I knew then my Empress seemed to be a bewitching enchantress, but more than that. She was the one and only treasure I would spend my entire life protecting.